like to him, one of the primary director's jobs was like to make sure you do nothing cliche. So if anything is remotely cliche, you have to change it. So I have this kind of like neurosis almost when I go in to write anything that has to be wholly its own thing. So as a result, I end up just writing like fucking hundreds of scenes and throw them away because I'm like, I've seen that before, So I'm trying to, and I'm not like, by the way, by the time it's finished, it's not a wholly original piece. Of course, it's still based on what came before, but at least I feel I've been honest in it. Like millions of people will watch it and go like, oh, that's just like that film. Like,
Today on the show, we are joined with film director Phil Sheerin. He's got a brand new feature film out called Winter Lake, and it's absolutely awesome. The cast is insane. It's got people from like Game of Thrones, Peaky Blinders, the chick from Sex Ed on Netflix. Wow, it's amazing. This happens to be his first feature film as well. At the beginning of the interview, we talk a lot about the film, but as we go on, we talk about his path getting into the industry, writing, and turning his childhood dream into a job. This is a great interview, very introspective, and this is for anybody who's just out there going for it, whether you're into film, whether you're into music, whether you're into comedy, whether you're a baker, a candlestick maker, anything you want to do in life. Just go for it and make it happen, baby. But without further ado, here's Phil Sheerin coming at you. Hey, Phil.
hey, Sean, how are things?
Great. How you doing today?
I'm all right. Happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. What time is it where you're at right now?
Oh, it's fine. It's like 4 p.m.
Oh, right on. So we're
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of how the time shift worked or whatever, because it's the morning here in Canada, and I'm like, is he getting up at 3 a.m. or something? But
no, it's not too early there, right? It's like 11, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a decent time, but really nice to meet you, and it's very cool too. This was kind of like spontaneously set up the other day. And what I love that when I'm about to talk to a filmmaker too, because it's almost like you watch the film and then you can immediately just ask all the questions that hop in your head like right when it's over. So some people probably like see that as like almost like procrastination, but I like to like watch the film till like the last minute. So I fired it up this morning with my breakfast, and it was awesome. I want to say too. It was one thing I appreciated, I think, the most about it. It was such like a tight cast in remote location, but it told like such a big story, you know. And as I'm watching this film, it kept me so intrigued to what's gonna happen next, or how the pieces of the puzzle are going to come together, with people knowing like certain information of what they found out at the beginning, trying not to spoil anything. But as a director, when you get a script like this, do you just start imagining in your head how is this going to be, how like the location's going to be and everything like that?
I'd say, like profoundly so, but it was easier on this, like, because David Turpin, the writer, he writes very beautiful prose almost in the script. Like, it's very descriptive. There's a gothic feeling, very poetic. So you really get a solid sense of the world. So your imagination doesn't feel too taxed, I would say. And so like as I was reading it, it was just something that definitely came to life and lived in my head quite easily. But it's the same, like kind of like what you were saying about like how much of a chamber piece it is, like just a few people kind of isolated and constricted and all that kind of stuff. But I suppose it's the themes that are quite broad and universal that would hopefully make it feel a little bit more, that it's not so esoteric as to only appeal to people who live in the west of Ireland. So.
Yeah. Even I was thinking too, like how it was shot, like it's all kind of like has a gray tone to it. It's like kind of like when they're outside, it's almost like after it rains. And like, is that like difficult to kind of divvy like days with the weather being like that to be consistent, or is it just always gray in Ireland like that?
It's pretty much like, because we shot winter in Ireland, like it was kind of like February, late February we started shooting. So that's kind of the weather you get, but also like, you know, you just have to shoot anyway. If it, like, you know, in the middle of the day, the sun comes out, you just have to keep going. And you hope the grade can pull it down or pull it together or that. But yeah, like we're not. I know Sam Mendes and Roger Deakins on what's that 1917. They got to wait for the weather. We're not there yet, so
Yeah.
we'll wait for the weather on something else. But yeah, no, it was just like Ireland gives you a lot, and the script was written with a sense of place in mind, which, as I said, comes naturally through from the landscape and from the weather, particularly out west. Like the west of Ireland is very wet. You've the air coming in, what you call it, the Gulf Stream coming in across the Atlantic, hitting cold air, and just like a lot of rain. So
Yeah, yeah, and I know a few Irish people listen to the show. Shout outs to shout outs to Johnny Shea in Limerick right now. But where just like what town was that in Ireland? Just I'm sure some people would be interested.
Cooley was one of the towns. We shot it in a few, but Cooley was the main town we set it in. But the actual, like, the main house and the houses, they're like that's anywhere. Like kind of it should feel like a little bit more forgotten. Like, you know what I mean? It's on the edge of anywhere. The house itself. Yeah. So, but that's kind of geographically, it's on the border between Sligo and Leitrim. There you go. There's for Johnny.
Yeah. That's actually very interesting to hear too, because as a viewer of the film too, like I imagined everything was all together, and just like how you mentioned, like you've been shooting all these different places. You guys did a really good job of kind of piecing the puzzle and making it feel like it's like that consistent small town.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's always. I wouldn't even say it's difficult. It's always a concern that you have to think about it, and you have to think. Like always, they left on the right of frame, and there was a wall there, so now we have to bring them past the wall from left of frame, and that's a different town. That kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's just planning, I suppose. But it's quite easy. You just need to plan ahead. But it's good.
Yeah, and if
fun. It's fun.
Yeah, it's got to be an interesting thing, and I think a lot of people who watch movies, they don't think of that kind of thing too. Which
unless you see a film shot in your hometown. And then you see the person walks up what you know is the main street and take a left, and then they're on a completely different street, and you're sitting there and you're like, that's not that street. What the heck? So
I've seen that a bunch with my hometown, but also one thing I give kudos to the classic film Ghostbusters. I was in New York on a trip, and there's like a scene where Rick Moranis runs from his apartment and then runs across the street in the park, and there's a restaurant. And I remember just walking down the street, and I'm like, hey, that's the Ghostbusters apartment. And I look across the street, and I'm like, oh, there's the restaurant. It felt like I was in the movie. And that's like another thing I appreciated like about that film and shit like that. But
what's that restaurant, Tea in the Park or something? Is that what it's called? I can't remember.
Yeah, I forget the name of it. It's just like Glass One or whatever.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back in like a bit of your history too. It's like I believe this is the first film I've watched of yours too, and I want to know a little bit how you got into filmmaking. Was there like a specific movie you saw when you were a kid? I want to do that, or just something random you fell into?
No, it's my first feature. So unless you watch shorts,
cool.
You wouldn't really see anything. But gosh, when did I'd say it goes out like my house was a kind of a entertainment focused house in terms of like we weren't musicians or like artists. Like my mother ran a coffee shop, my dad was a baker, but there was always music, there's always films, there was always this kind of like there was always a cacophony going on, and films was just what I gravitated towards. And I was like two cooler older brothers that would show me the right movies at the right age, that kind of thing. But I was 12. So the one that changed me, or the one that made me, I wouldn't necessarily say it made me want to be a filmmaker itself, but it made me look at movies so profoundly differently that I started obsessing over them. It wasn't until much later that I actually wanted to be a director itself. But the film was High Plains Drifter by Clint Eastwood.
Oh, cool.
It was a second movie, but there's two edits. There's an American edit that's more focused, that's more a straight Western, but the edit they released in Europe play up the supernatural aspects of it. And I was 12 years of age watching this, what I thought would be a normal Western that ended up having a kind of a Faustian bargain in it. Like the main character sold his soul to the devil to come back and wreak havoc on the town, this kind of thing. And I was just blown away. Like, it opened my mind completely as a kid, because I'd probably seen films that did conflate multiple genres or genre bending or whatever you want to call it. But this was the first time I watched it and was aware of what was going on. And also first time I kind of watched a film that had an anti-hero, where I was like, oh, it's weird that I'm rooting for the bad guy. That's kind of strange. But anyway, so like one of the bad guys, they're all bad, and he's just the bad guy we're following, but we're on his side. So that was it. Like, yeah, it was kind of like, it opened my eyes more that stories, the stories are more constructed, that they're more malleable, that way more goes into them than I would have thought. Like, you know, as a kid, you just think that you think they're easy as well.
Yeah.
It's like, as a kid, you're kind of, anything is great, but also you watch a lot of Spielberg and stuff. So of course it's great, like, you know, but this was kind of the first time where I could kind of see the building blocks and kind of like the idea of moving them around. But then just, throughout my teens, I was the kid who the rest of my friends would go drinking at 15, and I'd go home and watch films and play video games. And that was my thing. So yeah, then that just went, I'd say I was in the middle I was studying aircraft engineering when I kind of had this, I just knew I wasn't going to do that. And I also knew I wanted to do something in film, but I'm from a normal background. I know nobody in the film industry. I knew nobody. I know people now, obviously. So I just had no idea how to go about it. So I waited a few years to try anything. I was 26, I think, or 25, something like that, when I actually started getting little jobs on sets. And it was only because I had a car. And like that's the best way into the film industry. Like, go to smaller size production companies, ask them, are they shooting anything? Tell them you have a car. They'll put you on the payroll. Yeah. They'll pay you back all, but they'll put you on. Like, so that was kind of it. And just through bouncing around through the different departments, I initially thought I wanted to be a cinematographer, because I was always into like aesthetics and art photography in that kind of sense, and like just composition and lighting and blah. But it was quite quickly that I kind of, there was a weird thing. It was like working on sets that I realized that I actually used to write a lot, like still do, but I would write and not consider myself having written anything. Like, if I had an idea for a story, I'd write it down, but genuinely forget about it. But also, in a weird kind of part of my head, think that's what everyone does. Everyone has his ideas and puts them away. So it was kind of a combination of having these ideas that I was always like kind of like churning out, a bit passionate about, mixed with this strong kind of, passion for aesthetics and passion for like the old school way of doing things, like Max Offel's kind of style of blocking and stuff. That I was like, oh, that's not really the cinematographer's job. Like, kind of feels more like the director's job. So from like 20, so that was only a couple of years. So I was like 27, 28 when I was like, right, I'm going to be a director. Screw that. But then I went back to university, studied rather than like kind of hustling my way up the ladder, because there kind of really isn't a ladder.
Yeah. It's scary too to try to make that jump too. I feel like I kind of had a similar path as you too. It's kind of my late 20s. I embraced like my creativity, started getting into like videography and podcasting and stuff. But I'd always be like on the middle of the fence of like trying to do something else. Like you were saying, like you were like doing like aircraft engineering and stuff. And was it in your mind, you're like, oh, this is a job that can actually pay the bills one day? And then you had film on the other hand, where it's like, ooh, this is like a jump, a risk, I don't know what's going to happen type?
Definitely. Like I got in, like, I think engineering is fascinating. Like, I love knowing how things work on a mechanical level, generally more than I know nowadays. Everything's computer programming and all that, and I'm just like, oh man, I just can't get my head around this. But on a mechanical level, I really like, and like, you know, it's like power plants and all that kind of stuff. I think it's brilliant, and I can see it operating in my head. I think it's fun. So I was into it. And then like, planes are brilliant. Who doesn't love planes? Everyone grows up loving planes. So there was an aspect of all that, but it was quite quickly into the studying of it and into the working of the job that I was just like, the actual work isn't for me. Everyone, like, you know, the novelty of learning something is always fun. So I enjoyed that thing. It's tough, but it's like, I enjoyed that. But again, my go-to relaxation was still going to films and this kind of thing, and talking about films. Like, I have all these memories of where I was supposed to be working with like one of my friends, an engineer friend, like Des, and I'd let him do all the work as I just tell him my latest story ideas. And I'd be just standing there with a screwdriver and he'd be doing all the work then. That's great. I barely worked. Yeah, I barely worked. I'd just be like waffling about the films I want to make or the stories I like. But then when it came time to actually making the leap, it didn't feel that dangerous, probably because like you're in your 20s, you feel a bit bulletproof and you're a bit like overly optimistic, I suppose. But also I get a lot of support from my family. Like, you know, like we're very tight. Like my mom, like as I said, like we're not like floating in money or any of that stretch of imagination, but you need as much emotional support as anything else. Because there's a serious amount of downtime where you have to stay motivated yourself, keep working, and you need people to kind of keep a fire under you sometimes. Same thing with like, there's a lot of rejection in the industry. So like, it's very easy to get disheartened, particularly like, you know, I have a lot of actor friends and like they build up, like the people who can handle it build up a lot of defenses for that. But yeah, so I needed to lean on my family a lot and like move back home from time to time and this kind of aspect. So I always knew I had that cushion, you know what I mean? That if shit ever really went terribly, or if there was nothing coming in for like 2 years, I just go back into my childhood room and screw it. That's it.
That's awesome.
That's it for now on.
Yeah, no, that's great. You can play your cards, and that's cool that you have like a family that's such supportive too. I also love how you mentioned too, almost like interning, like because you had a car, you can get on set and you can drive them around or like get coffee or whatever. And I always tell people like, no matter what they want to do, like, because I know so many talented people who may do a craft, but they don't know how to get into the industry. And it's really networking and putting your foot forward. And like, if you want to film something and you don't know how to film, like buy the camera and fuck around, make mistakes. But it's especially just getting out there and seeing other people do it as well is very important. You learn faster that way. And
no one's ever going to give you anything. Like you really have to forge your own path into it. Like, you know, like even if you like your friends and how they make it in the industry, you can't really copy them because you're a different person and you're into different things. So you have to like genuinely, you have to kind of almost entrepreneurial ship your way through the like form a strategy and go for it. And mine was just quite early on was that thing of like, I had a hatchback car, but she was like, she had a couple of 100,000 miles, but she'd do the job. And like, I was just willing to do anything. Plus, like I dug it, like, you know what I mean? And there's good camaraderie on set, and it's just, it was fun. It was definitely that sense of like, oh, I'm in the right place. I'm in the right industry at least, kind of thing. Because you're not sure initially, because you don't know. Things can be completely different than what you imagined it to be. But it was a lot more stressful, but in a fun kind of, you know, like these long days, like, and then even when you get home, you still have to do stuff. Like when I was working on camera crew, you're coming home, but you've like batteries all full in the boot of the car, and you have to bring the batteries in, and then you're charging the batteries overnight, and you just get up and bring them out, and all this kind of stuff, and then bring them to set, and you're just like hoping that like nothing went wrong, or like there's no kind of weird power outage because you're like draining so much current to fill these batteries.
And people don't see that side of thing. Like I worked in like videography and live events for shows and concerts and shit like that too. And it's like some of the stories are like, you ever have like things where like something's going wrong and then you somehow just magically like fucking jerry rig it and like and it's still like you fix everything, but people don't know on the back end like how you had to like run across town to get like this type of charger, this kind of thing, just to make it happen. And there's a little
that's everything. That's the job, isn't it? And that's the fun. That's what I mean, when you're starting out, that's actually what I really like. I love the problem solving kind of hodgepodge nature of it or whatever. But I know like eventually I was lucky enough to kind of work my way onto like our budgets for shorts and that kind of stuff, and being passionate about what I wanted to say rather than just getting a job. So
for sure.
And also
you mentioned this was your first feature, and I didn't know that. Congrats. And even actually watching this and why I kind of asked you about your history, I just assumed like you have like a big library and you talk about the networking too. Your cast as well in this. You got like the dude from Game of Thrones, Peaking Blinders, Emma, she's on like Netflix. Like, yo, it's like
Yeah.
all like heater characters right here. And that's so special and awesome for your first feature to have like just
Yeah.
yeah, something like that.
We were super lucky, like genuinely really lucky. So many things just fell into place. Like not only were we really lucky to get the cast of that notable, but also that are that good. Like, because just because someone's famous doesn't mean they're good, but these are all absolutely like so talented. But then also that they got on, like they loved each other. They were so supportive. They were like there for each other all the time, and it was like difficult conditions. Like, you know, as I said, Ireland in the middle of winter, and they're in fields of these like the houses that you film in on film, they're always in bits. They're always wrecked. They're always like there's always dust everywhere and no heating and stuff. So you have to make do, like make best of a bad situation. But like they were just so fantastic with each other. And yeah, and then even if you look at Anson and Emma in particular, like the two teens in it, or the younger characters, Emma isn't a teen anymore. But but yeah, like they really had to have a chemistry. They really had to get on, while at the same time she had to be this almost kind of reinvented femme fatale that kind of had to be believable, that fits inside this little world in like fucking west coast of Ireland, and like embodied all these starlets, but at the same time, someone, oh yeah, she looks like someone who's from there, fair enough. While then Anson had to go through all this mental anguish that he has bottled inside, and then he has like 5 lines of dialogue in the whole film. So like, how do you make that happen? Like, you know what I mean? In terms of how do you make sure that they really have chemistry? And yeah, a lot of it's luck, to be honest. Even though we did have them together beforehand, but it was like we had them together, even though we had very little options. Like it was just like, this better work. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
no,
Even
they're
like
amazing.
it's so interesting when I think about Anson's character too. And like you mentioned, oh, he probably only has like 5 lines or something like that, but he's still like telling the story out of expression and stuff like that, almost to the point where I wasn't thinking about how little he was speaking, like just his
Right.
actions and the way he just carries throughout the film. And I'm trying my best not to spoil anything because I want people to experience the film themselves. But yeah, that's just kind of I don't know, it just shows like the work of a great actor when you I don't know, you can just kind of do that and kind of like trick me to not even think that you're not speaking, but you're still guiding the story and everything. It's cool.
Yeah. I think he did the work. And I suppose that's kind of what's important there. Like, because it'd be very easy for an actor to have, and I don't think like actors do the work. This isn't me saying actors are lazy. Like they
Yeah.
do the work. They're normally, they're so passionate. Why wouldn't they? But so Anson got the script, and he's in like so much of the film. Like he's in at least 65% of the scenes. And I said he talks very rarely, if ever, in a scene. But he came to the table with like when we were like showed up, and he had like just notes, like notebooks upon notebooks of what he felt the character would have been thinking, and this is what's on their mind, and not writing down pinpoint like on this, when this person says this, I'm going to be thinking this exact thing. Just more in a like in an atmosphere sense. Like he knew how the character would, like, you know, how they would want to respond. This kind of, because the character has such an internal life, and like there's this lack of normal expression, like in terms of like being able to, as you're saying, being able to talk or being confident. Like he's a little bit intimidated by people, but he definitely has such an internal world that he knows how he should respond, but there's all these checks and balances, and he's nervous and all this. So he figured all that out, and he had this a game plan, I suppose, kind of colored so that he knew how in this scene, this is what I'm thinking about, and just like sit back. Kind of like it made my job easy, because
Yeah.
we should do that together. But at the same time, I'd let him go, and he'd be like, "Oh, that was great. Let's move on."
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. And that just shows like you got the right guy for the role too, because he cares that fucking much and just trying to
Yeah,
piece everything and really get into that character. And one
yeah,
thing
totally.
it kind of intrigued me actually getting introduced to that character near the beginning too. I was talking to my friend who's a social worker too, and she was kind of talking about like how like some people who kind of have that social like awkwardness, it usually connects to something that's going on in their past. And just that conversation was fresh in my memory as I was watching this film too. And it was almost like, oh, we're gonna like, as the film goes on, we're gonna figure out his story, and which did happen with not only him, actually like all the characters too, which I thought it
Yeah,
was very well done too. It's almost like you get present all your pieces, and then it all just kind of comes in together into one thing at the end.
yeah. Well, if the film is more concerned with that, I would say like it's more concerned with the psychology and the emotion and the traumatic past of each of the characters rather than the plot, if you know what I mean. Like, so like the climax is more about we've learned all we need to learn, or we've learned the dark past of these people. And by dark past, I'm not necessarily just saying like, here's the dark secret they don't want to tell. Like, it's quite simply like with Tom, like the main character, we kind of realize by the end that even though he shuts himself away from everyone and keeps everyone at arm's length, and he's this isolated character, what he actually wants more than anything is someone to take care of him. It's why he takes care of the objects, the inanimate objects, that kind of thing. And we kind of learn why, or we learn how his early trauma is manifested in that way. And the same with Elaine, like, you know, the mother, like her similar past, like parents dumping her, like, and with the grandparents not understanding her running away. So again, there's this sense of, like I would say, ultimately, it's a sense of loneliness that kind of binds everyone. That they're all in some way they've all perverted themselves in trying to find some kind of companionship in any kind of way, like romantic or familial, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, definitely like such like a deep story with like maybe 5 like subplots that come together, but
Yeah.
as I'm saying it, like it might sound to people like, oh, this is crazy, that's kind of nuts, but it's like as a viewer, it was so easily digestible. Like I got to give you kudos because it just kind of just had like such a nice flow, and like actually it wasn't even a long movie. It was like an hour and a half too, and it just I don't know.
An hour and a half.
It felt like I watched the whole series this morning, but it was just it was like a quick like bang.
Yeah, I suppose the pacing is quite methodical. I'd say, like, you know, the pacing is deliberate. So like, or like Netflix people would probably say it's slow, but to me it's deliberate, it's methodical, while at the same time, yeah, because it's only an hour and a half, and a lot of story happens in an hour and a half. So to me, it's quite quick.
Yeah, kudos. So yeah, like you mentioned, this is your first feature too. How you feeling getting this out to the world right now?
It's just like, because we shot it over 2 years ago, nearly two and a half years ago. Yeah. So like the film has been finished a year and a half. So COVID's kind of just got in the way of everything. So it's actually weird talking to people about it now, because it feels so long ago. Because like genuinely, like the whole like making a film and all that, it's so much effort for such an intense period of time. But then it ends. Like you get like dozens and dozens of emails a day, and then all of a sudden one day they're over. There's a stop. It's done. So on that level, I'm enjoying kind of talking to people about it. I'm enjoying, but there's also this wild disconnect where I have to kind of really think back. I'm just like, oh yeah, we did that, didn't we? Yeah, okay. But yeah, no, it's good. I'm happy, and I'm also happy it's just getting out, because it's like I said, it's sat waiting for a kind of release during COVID and all that kind of stuff for like a good year longer than everyone was expecting. So
yeah, and
it pushed out.
And that year felt longer than the year. You know, it's a weird fucking times and everything. And yeah, it's unfortunate that your first feature kind of hit around that, but I don't know. Like
Sure, like whatever. It's also good. Like everything's a part of the journey, you know. Like, so as long as we all learn lessons from on good and bad, we'll be fine moving forward. So. And then, but I'm happy. I like literally, I'm focused. Like as you have to be. Like everything moves forward, you have to focus on the next thing. So that's kind of it.
Yeah, definitely. And can you talk about the next thing? Do you got something in mind? Are you working on something? Or
I'm developing two. Like, you know, I work with 2 production companies in London. Oh God, one of them is about an old woman like an 80-year-old woman gets pregnant, and the other women, if the other women in the commune kind of thing, think she's a witch as a result, so it becomes a witch trial kind of thing.
Oh wow.
But that one's kind of it's a lot about sexuality and repression and things like that, which is kind of like whatever, like coming from a Catholic country, it's always ever present. But also in particular with me, it's kind of something that I've become kind of obsessed with, like just the notion of, or what is sexuality and things like that. But then, and then just looking at your life and the breadth of your life and what sex means to you at different parts of your life. And then, yeah, so that's kind of that's what the story is about, like thematically, while at the same time has the whole plot. So,
yeah, well, it's wicked.
Yeah, but then like I'm writing it. Like again, the other two things. So that one has a bit more heat, I suppose you'd say. The other two things are, God, they're definitely more pet projects in terms of I've been working on them for years. One was a TV show based on Napoleon. It's massive. I suppose it'd be just like, you know, if I win the Oscar, they'll let me make this one, I suppose.
Yeah, that's just all the history you got to sift through. And
it's kind of intense. But I've outlined the story that it's not actually Napoleon's life. It's taking Napoleon as inspiration for something else. But it's still trying to reference history an awful lot, but reflect it now or using it now. There's that, and then there's a feature. The other feature is the IRA thing about an adult who he's trying to, he's coming to terms with something he did as a teenager, but now he's in his 50s. And it's kind of like, trying to put the wrongs to right while at the same time being stuck in an unwinnable situation. So.
Yeah, that's cool. I look forward to all these. I'm a new fan, Phil. So yeah, I also I like how like you kind of, even though like they're different stories, there's like it seems like there's a thematic thing going on with people overcoming like internal type of struggles too. And yeah, I know, totally. I'd say generally like most of my shorts have a lot to do with family and kind of like, and not that I necessarily think this about my family, but generally there's like, how far can you push someone you love until the love disappears, kind of thing. Like, and I mean so like how, like, you know, if you have a mother and son and they just like, they clearly love each other, but they're also just like, the son is a hellraiser, this kind of thing. Like how bad can he get before the mother pushes him out of the house? This kind of narrative on many levels, because you have that with like obviously romantic relationships as well, like, you know, like just boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wife. But like, I find it particularly fascinating, probably just because of the family I grew up in. There is that thing of like, like the Godfather style thing, is you never turn your back on your family, that kind of thing. So like in my head, it's like, but when do you? Like how far, how bad do you have to get to turn your back on your family? So that's cool. Like there's a lot of like psychology going into your work. It's cool. That's really interesting too. Like, it's so true. It's like just having like such a strong bond that like on the surface people will be like, oh, that's forever, but then you take it a step further, it's like, okay, what would cause this to crumble type of thing, and just map it out. Like, that's got to be wild too. As like did you find like it's exhausting to write these pieces, or do you have fun writing these pieces?
No, I find it exhausting. Like, so like I didn't write Winter Lake, by the way. Like, that was David Turpin, but and he's very much a writer in terms of like, Jesus, he'd give you a new draft in like a week, like this kind of stuff. And I was like, how the fuck are you doing it this fast? This kind of shit. Whereas like with my stuff, I don't enjoy the writing process. I'm very dyslexic, so it's a slow, arduous thing. So my imagination works quite well when I'm not putting pen to paper, when I'm just kind of thinking to myself, and I will record voice notes. But then trying to put it down in a linear fashion or just in a scene and listening to how people talk and all that, it just takes me for absolute ever. But then similarly with the scenes itself, I kind of, I'm a big fan of Sidney Lumet, right? I think he's absolutely amazing. And I always remember Sidney Met saying that like it's the direct, like to him, the primary, well, one of the primary director's job was like to make sure you do nothing cliche. So if anything is remotely cliche, you have to change it. So I have this kind of like neurosis almost when I go in to write anything that has to be wholly its own thing. So as a result, I end up just writing like fucking hundreds of scenes and throw them away because I'm like, I've seen that before, I've seen that before. So I'm trying to, and I'm not like, by the way, by the time it's finished, it's not a wholly original piece. Of course, it's still based on what came before, but at least I feel I've been honest in it. Like millions of people will watch it and go like, oh, that's just like that film. Like, oh yeah, shit.
I find people always like they try to find something to compare something to, and I talk to a lot of musicians on the show as well too, and it's always like the conversation where somebody like the average person will see something totally original and still try to put it in a box. It's like, oh, this sounds like Jimi Hendrix mixed with Jay-Z, and like they just like throwing out names of whether it's like films or artists or whatever, when sometimes you just gotta like take a breath and like take it for what it is. Like you don't always have to like reference somebody's work to somebody else's work who's like, whether they're more famous or something that you're personally more familiar with too. And that's just like my opinion, but it seems like it's common human nature to do that.
I think it is like to be someone like yourself or like an actual musician or a film buff, like a real film buff, who probably don't, like, you know what I mean, because they are taking it on the merit of what it is. Whereas I found like most of my friends who are like, you know, just like working in everyday industries, whatever, like plumbers and that kind of stuff, they're predominantly the ones who are doing it, but they're doing it for a very real reason. Like, you know, like if you like Die Hard, you'll like this, that kind of to and from. So they're kind of selling the film to each other, and to sell it, you gotta like, it's a, like same but different approach, like, you know. So whereas if I was talking to my film mates or whatever, I'd be genuinely pulling focus as to how different it is and that kind of stuff. So but no, I agree with you. But also like, it's also how they sell movies. So kind of frustrating. That's like, you know, they copy the posters. They like, oh, it makes the trailer a bit like this. Like the trailer for Winter Lake was made to look a bit more actiony, which I don't like, you know, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but I don't agree with how they portrayed the trailer, because it makes it feel more, it makes it feel like more like a carbon copy rural noir, that there's like explosive action and all that kind of stuff. Whereas it's not, it's more psychological, it's more internal, that has like two explosive moments, that kind of thing. So so,
they just kind of spice it up a bit too, and
spice up, big music, lots of crash cutting and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, there's not much editing in this film either, like, you know, it's kind of like precise.
But it was cool. I didn't think of it that way, but the trailer was a little like craziness, and I was expecting like people are going to be getting stabbed every 3 seconds, but I was so happy with the film experience I got from that.
All right, brilliant.
Thanks. It's wicked. And so people like who are listening to, you can watch this now. I believe it's on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, and I think in Canada it's on Kojiko and Bell as well, for people who are in this area. And it's cool to just pick your brain. And one more thing, like we talked about like your shorts and everything too, and I want to know a little bit, like, how did the moment transition into you being able to do a feature? Was it where you just keep grinding over and over again and like made these connections, or was it this one day you're like, I'm gonna write something bigger and pitch it type of thing? Or
as in like, how did I get the job?
How you basically, how like the Winter Lake kind of spawned for you to be the guy for it, to run the ship.
It's short. Like, anyone who wants to be a director has to just direct. Like, you have to do it. Like, you know, you can't, as I said, no one's going to give it to you, and you won't be able to talk your way into it if you haven't done anything. So you have to go out and you have to direct shorts, and they are still vital to the industry, and so are festivals. So what happened with me was I made a short called North, and it did very well, like on the festival circuit. And it did very well back, like, you know, just like Ireland's main festival is like one called Galway Film Fest. and it did well there. And at the same time, so this is like there's also a lot of luck involved. But at the same time, Tailored, like the production company, were looking for someone to attach as the director onto the script. So there wasn't the money in place yet, so that they had 1 or 2 drafts done, and they saw the short. It was similar in tone. It was similar in like kind of a lot of, not the same themes like in terms of abuse and that kind of stuff, but the themes about dynamics in terms of between mother and son and family and that kind of thing. And also dealt with isolation and loneliness and things. So they kind of just saw it. It made sense that we would talk with each other. It doesn't make sense that they'd give me the job, but it made sense that like I made this, like it was a half an hour short. It was like 28 minutes or something like that. So so it got me in the room, and then from there, yeah, it was just like you have to have a take, you know what I mean? Like when you read the script, you have to have, like, an opinion is one thing, but you have to talk about what you would want to bring out of it more, where you would direct your own, like where your own aesthetic would come into it, and what would change or what would get taken away, that kind of thing. So yeah, just those conversations led to another conversation, and eventually led to being on it. So yeah. But that was it. But yeah, but I would say, like, genuinely, if anyone, other than just raising the money yourself to make a short, or to make a feature, because that's ultimately, it's all about money. Like, you know, get the money, you can do it. But if you want to get in the room to get features, make shorts. And unfortunately, you have to send them to festivals. I say unfortunately because I love festivals, but they're fucking expensive. Like, Jesus Christ, you have to send it to a lot, because like, I don't know, everyone wants to see the laurels. Everyone wants you to have won something. Just making a great short and putting it on YouTube probably won't, like, more than likely won't get you much. But if you put it on, if it went to like Sundance, like, but then YouTube, people courting it like crazy. So it's like validation, I suppose, is what people are looking for. Because it's everything's a lot of money. Like, even though Winter Lake is like a low budget indie film, still $1 million. $1 million's a lot of money. Like,
fuck,
so,
yeah. And you see like the cast in it too. It's like you guys didn't cheap out on this one, like, for sure.
Well, yeah, like, money went into the cast, and like, I don't mean that in the sense of condescending, but yeah, no, like, we wanted the right cast, and then we wanted, like, you know, and then a lot of the money was like literally put on production design, in terms of like making sure the house was right, making sure the cafe was right, these kind of things. But we really kind of stripped down everything else, like, even, like, you know, lost a lot of scenes so that we could streamline things and focus on what we thought was most effective, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I love how you shared how you kind of made that transition to. I get like emails and messages from people who are like in different creative fields. I feel like they kind of gravitate to these little segments too. So I always love asking questions like that too. And I think that was an awesome answer of, like, it's crazy how, like, the grind is, you know. It's like, I'm sure while you're doing your shorts too, there's always like that seed in the back of your mind, will this lead to something bigger? If not, but you got to keep going and going. And almost like there's a point, like, sometimes like the universe gives you this opportunity and you're either going to be prepared or not prepared. But sometimes all those struggles or like whatever, just grinding it out or whatever, like, it'll teach you skills you didn't even know you had, and you be the perfect person at the right moment at the right time for something to happen. So yeah.
You gotta love it, in terms of, because it is so much work. And particularly with short, like, I don't mean short to more, or like, obviously making a feature is much more work, but with shorts, it's kind of all on your shoulders. Like, like when you direct shorts, you're carrying the whole thing on your shoulders, like, you and the producer generally, because like the crew come in and out for like 2 days and they're gone. The actors aren't for 2 days. Whereas, like, it has to be your baby, and you have to like love it to bits. So like, that's the only way to make it work, like I was saying. But yeah, that's why I kind of miss about shorts, I would say, is I think shorts is a purer vision because there's less people involved. But it is, and basically the only reason why I'm saying this is, like, you should put your all into each individual project and not have it like, oh, it's only a short to get somewhere else. Like, you should be treating like, this is the last thing I'm ever going to make. So like, you know, I better be happy with it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of, it's an approach that kind of has served me well so far. I think that like if it all ends after this, I should be happy because I put my all into it. That's my approach. Although I don't want it to be all over. I want it.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think there's power to that spirit, though. It just kind of has that focus and energy, like almost like manifesting how awesome it's gonna fucking be. You're just like, yeah, if this is my last film, if this is my last song, if this is my last performance, I'm just gonna lay it out, and this is what people are gonna remember me for. If like,
yeah, totally. Like I'm not that prolific in terms of like I do things slowly, so I get to kind of really invest in it. But some people take the opposite approach in terms of like, not that they're not like full of passion, but their passion is for the process rather than the thing. And like and they'll make like 3-4 shorts a year, and it's like it's what they're obsessed with is like just the creation of something, whereas I'm a little bit, I don't know, even though I'm very subjective in terms of my approach and trying to like understand the psychology and the emotions of it and all that, I still want to make something that has something deep to say and has like, you know, that hopefully resonates with people. And I would put a lot of kind of effort and kind of staying on the hamster wheel, kind of working the script to make sure that comes about. Like I'll do 30 drafts of the shorts just to make sure that it's right, that kind of thing. And I don't think that one side's better than the other. It's my way is the only way I can do it. But God, I know loads of people who've made brilliant things, and like, but they've had like 16 shorts, and there's like 5 brilliant ones, 5 pretty crap ones, or 5 brilliant ones, 5 good ones, and 5 pretty crap ones. But they're great, like in terms of, and they know what they're doing, and that's why they're doing it. They just want to make stuff, and that's like, yeah, I wish I had a bit more of that, to be honest. Like, cause I feel like I'm stuck in my head too much because I'm always trying to figure things out emotionally and psychologically, and it's just, it can slow you down. So
yeah, but it's almost like comparing it to almost like cooking something in a crock pot. You know, it might take like a day or two, but then at the end you got like something just fresh and juicy and everything. But I feel like maybe that's more your style, which is fucking awesome. And yeah, like I mentioned, I'm a new fan, and people can check out Winter Lake on video on demand. Like I think I mentioned Bell, Kojiko. It's on a lot of things. Google it, iTunes, Google Play, all that and everything. But yeah, Phil, I wanted to say I appreciate your time today. It was a pleasure talking to you. And also for your next one, I'd love to have you back again too. Like this was like such a fun talk, and you're very introspective and kind of the type of people I like to have on these segments. You know?
Cool. Yeah, man, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode featuring Phil Sheerin. Like we mentioned, the film is called Winter Lake, and it's on demand almost everywhere you can imagine. Definitely check it out. Such a unique film. And right now, actually, you are listening to a song from one of our listeners. His name is Holdsy. Me and him go way back, and we just kind of reconnected, and I noticed he made some new music, and it is just awesome, and I recommend checking it out if you like punk rock. That is Holdsy, Holdzy, and the new EP is called Guard Down. So yeah, let me know if you dig this one. And Holdsy, maybe you can come on the show. That'd be a lot of fun to talk to you about this. But before we send you off with the rest of the song, I need to thank all you legends on the Patreon. First off, thanks to our co-producer, Jeremy Hopkin of Hopkin Design, Ola Mazuka of Sonic Fold, Ryan Watkins of Ryan Radio, Amanda McKnight of Top 10 Nerd, Pat Maloney, Ryan Campbell, Daniel Sun, Drew Stewart, Devin Staple, Mike Ulio, and Francis Coffer, aka my mom. Once again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. And this track is called Below the Above by Holdsy.